You know, just when you thought Mike Duggan was off the ballot for Detroit mayor this week, he's now actually considering a write-in campaign. So Nolan, tell us, do you think this is going to be a successful one?
I don't know, that's a long shot, but he is decided that that's something he wants to try. He told me this morning that, you know, it wasn't in his mind when he decided not to pursue this to his case to the Supreme Court when they booted him off the ballot. He said, you know, he got so much encouragement, so much pressure, particularly from the business community, promise of funds and what have you, that you know, he just sort of felt that it was something he had to do. I think it's going to be, as any write-in candidate, as we saw last year in the 11th congressional district, that it's not easy to get voters to remember to come into the polls and write your name in. Now, this is a much higher profile case. It worked up in Alaska with Lisa Murkowski. I don't know. It's going to, you know, he said it's probably going to cost him about $100,000, and he's going to need to get 15 to 20,000 people to write his name in to grab that second spot on the fall ballot. It's a big challenge.
Do you think it's going to take that amount of money, and do you think money alone is going to be able to get him over
I think it's not money, it's organization. And I actually think this gives Duggan maybe a better shot. He probably needs less here than he would have needed if he'd been on the ballot with the others. I mean, the threshold for getting a write-in candidate, I mean, at least now he's got a firm number that that he can target and say, if I can get to this number of votes, then I know I'm good. I'm still, you know, always skeptical of the idea of a write-in. I think it's difficult to convince people to do it. There's always the questions about, you know, spelling your name, and I don't know what the law says on that.
Well,
Yeah,
the law says,
who decides what the voters' intent was if they put down?
That'd be the clerk and the election commission. But you don't have to spell it exactly right. It is intent.
So if I say Duggan instead of Duggan, is that?
Or you know, you've got to say something close.
Yeah,
but,
right.
You know, Markowski used the wristbands so that voters remembered, and you could do something like, what you can't do is use stickers, which would have been a very efficient way of getting it done, but the stickers apparently jam the county machines. But Steve's right. I mean, now he doesn't have to run really a citywide campaign. He's just got to identify 15 to 20,000 of his voters and make sure he gets them to the polls. And when they get there, they know what to do.
Do you think that anything came into his decision, you know, some of the news this week about Benny Napoleon and possible contracts that people are looking at with Wayne County system, that he senses some kind of vulnerability there?
Well, there's vulnerability up and down the ballot in the mayor's race. I mean, this is the weakest field you can imagine. And so, again, I always thought that Duggan, despite the various drawbacks with his candidacy, was the strongest person in that field to begin with. So, I don't think he had to spend too much time assessing whether there was weakness that he could take advantage of. It's all over the place. The question is whether you can target. It's a very different kind of campaign than a general campaign. A write-in campaign is about different things.
He says that the business community has promised him the money, and it was the business community, the business leaders, who pushed him to do it. I talked to the Napoleon campaign this week. They claim that since Duggan dropped out, their contributions have doubled. I mean, they picked up a couple $100,000 after Duggan dropped out from the business community. So, you know, who knows what's going on here, but it will be expensive, and it is, by any measure, a long shot.
You know, Stephen, you were concerned that Duggan would still, because he had to fight his way on the ballot and he ended up losing, that would be something that would follow him around and would be a detriment to his campaign. Now with a write-in, do you think that still is true?
I think it's the damage from what was done to him is still there, and he is seen now, I think, by far more people than before as the outsider, the guy who's, you know, moving into the city and wants to take over, and that's a very hard perception to overcome. That will make the write-in campaign tougher, because I think.
But if he pulls it off, there's something heroic about
absolutely.
that.
If he gets on the fall ballot,
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of weeks. Well, you know, the Wayne County Jail project continues to be a massive problem for County Exec Bob Ficano, though he says there's been interest from international investors for the property where the project has been halted. County auditors are now looking at the finances. All right, Nolan, where are we with all of this?
That's just a crock of garbage. I mean, that's more Ficano's spin. There's not interest in that property, not for the price he thinks he's going to get it. Bob Ficano has wasted $120 million on this jail, and he's looking for for somebody to come along and give him $120 million for property that's worth half of that at most, and maybe a quarter of that amount. He was looking for somebody to bail him out so he could do what he should have done in the first place, and then it is take that complex along with the courts over to the abandoned Mound Road prison, join the city of Detroit lockup over there, and get the whole mess and all those orange jumpsuits out of downtown Detroit. This business about international investors, if he's got them, he should put their name on the table. He's trying to whipsaw Dan Gilbert, who he thought was going to write him a check, and Gilbert says, you know, I may buy the property, but I'm not going to wipe away your political embarrassment here by paying more than it's worth. This is just a despicable mess.
Despicable mess?
Well, I mean, I think that, well, for starters, there's a reason that we're not building the jail over at Mound Road to begin with, which is that this is not just the jail, but this was going to be the sort of central lockup for all of Wayne County. And so you were going to get rid of jails in some other communities and concentrate them in one place. Well, you needed to do that someplace where you have access to a lot of freeways. That's why the site that they're on was one that they were thinking about, and the other site that they really thought about was the old Tiger Stadium site, which would also have been a disaster. I'm not saying that you want jails in those places, but for what they're trying to do, you need a certain kind of location, which Mound Road didn't fit. Now, that doesn't excuse the fact that they've blown $120 million.
It's where they're going to end up, and they're going to make it fit. I mean,
we'll
you
see.
don't.
It may not.
Think
serve
of other
that
cities
then.
and whether they have jails in the heart of their downtown.
Well,
They
sure.
don't.
I mean,
this is another Turkia Mullen, stinky mess. I mean, you get to the bottom of this, and you've got the same sort of bad decision making and cronyistic deals that led to the county losing $26 million at Pinnacle Racecourse, $27 million at the Guardian Building, and nobody is really talking about it.
There's no argument that they screwed it up. I'm saying that the citing decision was not about corruption. That was about.
You can't say that with any confidence at this point.
I think
Mound Road is going to work for the city of Detroit. The state offered them a plan that will allow them to take the courts.
It will work for the jail. It will not work to absorb populations of these other jails because it's just an inconvenient location. That's why it wasn't chosen.
Well, where was all this heated discussion back when the decision was made?
Well, that's the point.
It was not.
It was not.
And the business community went nuts, and nobody else paid attention to them. There's plenty of ingress and egress out of that Mound Road site. If the state used it for a prison, why on earth can't the county use it?
Because you're not transferring prisoners in and out of
once they're in, they're in. You're looking at
the prison's different from a jail.
If you move your courts as well, which is what the state was suggesting they do, then you have less of that.
No, it's not the courts. It's the other jails. It's like the Dearborn Jail, the lockups downriver.
They were going to close those anyway, Steve.
No, they weren't. They were going to close those to move to the site downtown.
Exactly, and they could do the same thing at Mound.
A lot harder. The reason they chose where they were was because that's a lot more accessible place.
The reason they chose where they were, it was
it's right across the street from the current jail.
Sweetheart contracting and payoffs.
That's always part of the deal. Yeah, no, I agree.
Another cronyistic Wayne County mess.
So no one has a bid on the property right now. We've got nothing.
Well, but see, I also think it's a mistake to undervalue that property. If you're not going to build a jail there, it's pretty prime real estate.
Right for something.
Cross street from Ford Field, near Greektown Casino. You could have something great there.
Steve. I mean,
well, it's not worth that.
The Gilbert people figure it's worth between 30 and 60 if they can find other uses for the building.
Well,
and
that's going to be painful for the taxpayers.
The jail site itself wasn't worth the $15 million the county paid for it in the first place, in which Charlie Williams got a $400,000 finder.
Right. But the other possibility here is,
go ahead, Stephen.
If you can tear down Frank Murphy and move that out to Mound Road and the old jail, now you're talking about a very big site right on the edge of downtown. Right. You can do something really special.
And you got to make sure you got planners in place that are going to make sure that they're using it in the best possible way too.